Good morning, it's Mark from Top Local Lead Generation. We're here with Mr. Bernie Pawlik of Pawlik Automotive, and we're going to talk about BMWs. How are you doing today, Bernie?
Really well, really well.
So BMW has developed a real reputation as a desirable car, very high-tech vehicles, kind of car that says you've got it made. So are they all that they're cracked up to be?
Well, they're certainly well-built cars, and whether or not they're actually the ultimate driving machine, as they once claimed in their advertising, is to be debatable. But like many German cars in the high-end scale, they're well-built and awesome to drive. But they're not without their issues.
So what kind of issues are you seeing with BMWs?
Well, some items that come to mind, and these are mostly when the cars age a little bit, are the water pumps leak, thermostats fail. Some models, especially those with the V8 engines, develop some expensive oil and coolant leaks. These usually happen when the engines get a little older. You probably wouldn't see anything like that till the car's 8 or 10 years old. I think in BMWs, the six-cylinder engines are awesome. They're definitely the best option if you want a reasonably trouble-free car. It's amazing, the engine, like the six-cylinder BMW, they make them in every size from like 2 liter up to about 3.2 liters. So it's the same. If you look at the engine under the hood, it looks like the same thing, but they just enlarge or contract the engine, put different accessories on. And it's a smart idea from a manufacturer's point of view, but it's also great because they've had time to perfect it and make it work really well. I mean, overall, they're really reliable engines. But like all complex machines, and especially German cars, they're kind of finicky. Things like check engine lights go off a lot for various things.
So what other repetitive concerns do you see with BMWs?
Well, one big one that we see, and this is usually on the six-cylinder engine, is the crankcase breather valves fail. And when these valves wear out, they cause a number of issues like check engine light being on. Sometimes you start the car and a big cloud of blue smoke will blow out the back, or the car tends to burn oil. Which is kind of serious, but fortunately, it's not a very difficult thing to fix. I mean, it does cost a bit of money, but it's not the complete engine, which is a really good thing. We repair these frequently on BMW models on the six-cylinder engines. Brakes also wear fairly quickly on many models, especially the sport utility vehicles. And like all German vehicles, when the pads wear, the rotors wear out too. They're very hard on rotors for some reason. But in all fairness, it's not really any more than any other equivalent German car like a Mercedes or Volkswagen would be.
So how did BMW get to build such amazing cars? Didn't they start as a motorcycle company?
Well, actually, I was doing a little research on. They actually started as an aircraft company in 1917, but they were forced out of the industry after the First World War. And then they started making motorcycles, and then they started making cars. And then but then during World War II, they got back into aircraft engines, and they made some pretty amazing engines during that time. But after World War II, they got back into cars and motorcycles again. And it's quite amazing how the company's evolved. When you look at some of the cars and motorcycles they used to make, I'm always amazed by the way certain companies go, like Bombardier, which started with snowmobiles. I mean, now they make like world-class commuter airplanes and trains, but it's funny how a company will go. But BMW is kind of the same thing. They started with motorcycles, and now they make, some of the most amazing cars on the planet. If you've ever seen a BMW Isetta, it's worth looking at. It's a hilarious-looking car. It has the door of the car's in the front, and you climb in, and there's 2 seats, and it's got, I think it's got, I'm not sure if it's a 3-wheeled or 4-wheel car, but the 2 back wheels are very close together, and it has an air-cooled motorcycle-type engine. It's quite hilarious to look at. It's hard to imagine that they would have built the kind of cars they do now from that. Anyways, yeah, I think when you look at the World War II aircraft engines, you can see where their precision of manufacturing came in and the quality, and that it's not surprising they build the kind of cars they do nowadays.
So I've heard that BMWs don't require service very often. Can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, well, BMW, like a lot of European manufacturers, pride themselves on infrequent service intervals, and I think in a way, environmentally, it's a good thing. I mean, the less often you have to change your oil, the less oil is wasted and needs to be remanufactured and disposed of. It's also a great selling feature for the salesman or woman. they can explain to their potential buyer, oh, this car is great because it doesn't need any service. You'll rarely ever come in for service, and that's one of the great features. And there's also electronic reminders for when the service is due. It's to me it's somewhat of an engineering coup that they've been able to do this. And if you're leasing a car for a short period of time, maybe 3-4 years, it's a great sales feature because you don't need service very often, and they can probably throw in some free maintenance or some low-cost maintenance, and really the car's not going to need much. But I mean, these long service intervals, I mean, while there's a lot of engineering that goes into them, I really think that it's not best to stretch it out to that long-term interval. Like at most BMWs, it's 24,000 kilometers for oil changes. I mean, to me, that is way too long. By the time the oil hits 24,000 kilometers, it's really toxic. I mean, I don't know how good the lubrication quality is. I know there's a lot of engineering that goes into that. They probably wouldn't suggest it if there wasn't at least some sound basis for it. But I think if you want to keep the car for longer term, I wouldn't go more than 15, 18,000 kilometers before changing the oil. The other thing too that happens, of course, is that when you're leaving your vehicle for that long a period of time, you're not going to get any inspections done. And as a car it's great when the car is new, but as a car gets older, every 10, 15,000 kilometers, you really should have the car hoisted and looked at. Things will wear, and you don't want to be in an unsafe position. One thing that is amazing about BMW, a lot of newer BMWs, they have reminders for, they tell you when your brake pads need to be replaced, and these aren't just wear sensors, but they're actually I don't even know how they figure it out yet, to be honest, but they seem to be pretty accurate. So I mean, you can almost, with tire pressure monitors and that kind of thing, I mean, you can almost trust the system for a while. But I think when the car gets older, like 8, 10 years old and older, you definitely want to have it, inspected on a routine basis.
Any kind of final thoughts on BMW?
Overall, they're great cars. They're quite reliable. But being a fancy European car, you will usually spend more money than you would on an American or Japanese car. But that's not always true. BMW's got a variety of models of cars. They've got sedans, convertibles, sport utilities, quite racy cars. They're pretty they're pretty amazing. So if that car appeals to you, I'd say go for it. It's a great car, but you will spend generally more money on maintenance and repairs than you would on a well-built Japanese car. It's interesting. Sometimes even though they are more expensive, as I've said before, sometimes European cars can be cheaper to fix. So if you're looking for a great shop one last thing I can say, if you're looking for a great shop to service your BMW, we can absolutely be that shop for you. So that's all I have to say about BMW today.
Thanks, Bernie. So we've been talking with Mr. Bernie Pawlik of Pawlik Automotive. They're voted 13 times Vancouver's best auto repair shop by their customers, which is a pretty amazing record. And if you need any kind of service on your car or truck, these are the guys to go see. Thanks, Bernie.
Thanks, Mark. We'll talk again soon.